Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Well, any time we talk about a future made in Australia, we need to talk about energy security. And I note the member for Swan who moved this motion. I was on a panel with her last week talking about the importance of listening to scientists and taking the science. And member for Spence had a bit of a crack about nuclear, which is, to be honest, Deputy Speaker, quite disappointing. The reality is, as we transition to net zero and needing cheap, reliable baseload power to make sure we can manufacture in Australia, we need to have a mature debate and conversation about nuclear. So let's put some quotes in from the former chief scientist from 2016 to 2020, Alan Finkel. Former chief scientist, the member for Swan, talks about the importance of science and listening to the scientists. All we get when we have this discussion about energy reliability in our network is cheap insults from the minister and those opposite. So in an article and an opinion piece that the former chief scientist Alan Finkel wrote on the weekend, let's hear some of his words and his thoughts on nuclear. And I quote, "From the engineering point of view, it ticks many boxes. It is unequivocally zero emissions during operation, and the emissions associated with construction are low. It integrates smoothly with our existing electricity grid and contributes to frequency control and system strength. Nuclear power can be dispatched on demand independently of the weather and can, in principle, be located near existing transmission lines." I'm looking forward to the member for Swan taking the science and advocating in the caucus for nuclear, because the former chief scientist also said, and I quote, "The mining resources required for construction are low. No battery materials such as lithium and cobalt or rare earth elements such as neodymium and terbium are needed. The volume of fuel is small, with only 1 tonne of uranium needed to produce the same amount of electricity as 100,000 tonnes of black coal. The land footprint is only about 3 square kilometres for a 1 gigawatt nuclear plant versus about 60 square kilometres for a 3 gigawatt solar plant that would generate the same annual output. And nuclear power has an excellent safety record. Since commercial operations began in the late 1950s, the death rate from accidents and air pollution is as low as the death rate from solar and wind power, and much lower than the death rate from coal." It's again the former chief scientist of Australia. He also says, and he finishes his article by saying, and I quote, "It is worth considering nuclear power as a long-term option in Australia for 2 reasons. The first is to minimise the new land area and additional mining to expand electricity generation as our population continues to grow." And he continues, "The second is to minimise the ongoing mining and landfill from replacing batteries about every 10 years and solar panels and wind turbines every 25 years. That is a good question, Member for O'Connor. Where are the environmentalists? That's the former chief scientist, Alan Finkel. The member for Swan talks passionately about being an engineer and the importance of science. Well, I hope she takes the word of Dr Alan Finkel and starts to advocate in the caucus to at least have the conversation. Because if we don't have reliable baseload power that's cheap, we cannot manufacture in this country. I spent a decade working in food manufacturing. Energy reliability, energy security, cheap energy is crucial to making sure we continue to manufacture. It is one of the reasons we have inflation through the roof, is because energy prices are out of control, and it impacts every level for a food manufacturer, for any manufacturer, for their actual materials, for the raw materials they get in. Unless you have a proper strategy to bring prices down, to ensure reliability in the grid, we will lose the manufacturing base that we have in our country. This is a government that continues to make bad decisions that are impacting Australians. They're going down the same path by refusing to have a mature conversation, sticking to ideology, on a crucial issue for the future of our country.